There are places that should never exist, places that lure, deceive, and trap. This is one of them. A circus that doesn't appear on maps, doesn't announce its arrival, and when you least expect it, it's there, as if it had always been. It was a night like any other when the tickets arrived. No sender, no explanation, just a simple note. The Circus of Eternal Night awaits you. They didn't know it, but those pieces of paper were more than an invitation. They were a sentence. The circus arrived in town without warning. Faded, time-worn posters appeared overnight. The vibrant colors had long since vanished, but something about those images still caught the eye. A smiling clown with eyes that seemed to follow you wherever you went. The friends, of course, couldn't resist. After all, who could? A mysterious circus appearing out of nowhere was irresistible. They ignored the rumors. After all, they were just stories, right? They said the circus had disappeared 50 years ago after a terrible incident. No one knew exactly what happened, but the stories spoke of laughter that never ceased, of people who entered and never returned. They didn't realize it, but the circus was already watching them. Every step they took was a step deeper into the trap. And when the main clown stopped the show and pointed at one of them, it was as if the air had been sucked out of the tent. You shouldn't have come. And in that moment, the circus revealed its true face. The doors closed, the lights went out, and the friends realized they were alone, or almost alone. They tried to leave, of course. They ran toward the doors, but there were no more doors. Only walls of canvas which seemed to move, to fold, as if they were alive. The lights flickered, casting shadows that moved on their own. And the clowns, oh, the clowns, they were everywhere. Standing still, just watching, with wide smiles and empty eyes. Then the first one disappeared. One of the friends, who had been right behind them, simply vanished. No one saw what happened. They only heard a laugh, low and distant, echoing through the corridors. "He was here! He was here!" one of them shouted, but there was no one. Only silence, broken by more laughter. They tried to stay together, but the circus wouldn't allow it. Every time they turned a corner, something changed. A mirror that reflected a figure that wasn't there. A corridor that seemed endless. And always, always the clowns. It was when they found the photos. Old, black and white pictures of people who had never left the circus. Familiar faces of people who had disappeared decades ago. And among them, someone they recognized. She disappeared 20 years ago. How is she here? The circus wasn't just a place, it was a trap for souls. And they were trapped in it. The clowns began to move, slowly at first, as if testing the ground. But soon, they were everywhere. Chasing, surrounding, playing with them. They used magic tricks, illusions that confused the mind. A corridor that bent in on itself. A mirror that reflected something that wasn't there. And always, always those laughs. One by one, they disappeared. First, the bravest one, who tried to confront the clowns. Then, the fastest one, who thought he could outrun the circus. And finally, the smartest one, who believed he could find a way out. Those who remained found more clues. Old photographs, notes written in shaky handwriting, and a diary that told the story of the circus. He made a pact. One of them read aloud. A pact to keep the circus alive, but he needed souls, human souls. The main clown wasn't just a performer. He was the spirit of the circus's former owner, trapped in an endless cycle of pain and suffering. And now, he wanted more souls. "You cannot escape," he whispered, without moving his lips. "The circus never lets anyone go." They knew they had to do something. But what? How do you break a pact made with something beyond human understanding? That's when they discovered it. The pact could be broken, but only by someone willing to face the clown in his own game. A deadly game, where the stakes were their very soul. He knew he had no choice. If he wanted to save the others, he would have to face the clown. And so, he walked into the main ring, where the clown was already waiting. "Let's play," said the clown, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "If you win, the circus will disappear. If you lose, well, you already know." And so, the game began. Disturbing questions, answers that cut like knives. Each round was a battle, not just of wits, but of courage. And then came the final question, the one that would decide everything. What is your greatest fear? He knew he couldn't lie. The clown would see right through him. So he answered, I'm afraid of never escaping, of being trapped here forever. The clown laughed, a loud, piercing laugh that echoed through the circus. You win, he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But do you really think this is the end? The circus began to collapse, the lights flickering and the canvas walls falling. He ran, trying to find a way out, and then he saw it. The doors were there. He could escape. But when he looked back, he saw something that made him stop. The friends who had disappeared were there, but they weren't the same anymore. Escaping isn't as easy as you think, whispered the main clown without moving his lips. The light rain fell on the car, forming small streams on the windshield. Anna gripped the steering wheel firmly, but her eyes, reflected in the rearview mirror, betrayed an unease she was trying to hide. In the back seat, Lucas and Carla laughed at a joke Pedro had just told, but the sound of their laughter echoed strangely, as if distant, almost artificial. Are you sure this place is a good idea? Carla asked, looking out the window. The forest was beginning to appear on the horizon, a dark and imposing mass that seemed to swallow the road. Of course it is, Lucas replied, excited. It'll be like old times, remember? Camping, bonfires, scary stories. Scary stories? Anna interjected, trying to disguise the tremor in her voice. I think we've had enough with the legends the guy at the camping store told us. Pedro, ever the skeptic, let out a laugh. Oh, come on. Legends are just stories to scare tourists. Nothing he said makes sense. But what if? Carla started, but stopped herself, as if she didn't want to give voice to her own fears. What if nothing? Lucas cut in, lightly tapping her shoulder. It'll be fun, I promise. Aina glanced at the rearview mirror again. The forest was closer now, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the circus, the bright lights, and the painted faces that had once been her family. She remembered the accident, the blood, the silence that followed. She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. All right, she said finally, but if something strange happens, I warned you. The car turned onto the dirt road leading into the forest, and the group fell silent. The rain stopped, but the sky remained heavy, as if the world were holding its breath. The forest was denser than they had imagined. The tall, twisted trees formed a natural canopy, blocking the sunlight and plunging the ground into a damp twilight. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves. Anna parked the car in a small, uneven clearing where they decided to set up camp. What a creepy place, Carla murmured, hugging herself to ward off the cold that seemed to come from within. Oh, stop being dramatic, Lucas said, unloading the backpacks from the trunk. It's just a forest. Trees, birds, the usual. Pedro helped set up the tents, but his gaze was distant, as if he were calculating every move. He didn't say anything, but Anna noticed he was also uneasy. When the camp was ready, the group gathered around a fire that barely burned. The flames flickered, producing more smoke than heat, and the shadows danced on the trees around them, creating shapes that seemed to move on their own. Did you hear that? Carla asked suddenly, her eyes scanning the darkness. Hear what? Lucas asked, but before she could answer, the sound came again. A distant laugh, sharp and shrill, echoing through the trees. Everyone fell silent, looking at each other. Even Pedro seemed unsettled. It's probably just a bird, he said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. Aina looked into the forest, feeling a chill run down her spine. She swore she saw something moving among the trees. A tall, lanky figure with bright colors that didn't belong in the somber surroundings. Let's get to the tents, she suggested, trying to stay calm. We'll figure out what to do tomorrow. No one argued. As they settled in, the laugh echoed again, closer this time. The night was long and restless. Anna barely slept, every sound from the forest making her jump. When the sun finally rose, weak and pale through the trees, she stepped out to breathe fresh air. That's when she noticed Pedro's tent was empty. Pedro, she called, looking around. Lucas and Carla emerged from their tents, still groggy but alert upon hearing the concern in Anna's voice. He probably just went for a walk, Lucas said, trying to sound nonchalant. But his expression was tense. Or maybe he went to gather firewood, Carla suggested, though her voice trembled. Anna didn't respond. She was already walking toward the forest, following a trail of large, disproportionate footprints leading away from Pedro's tent. The footprints were strange, as if made by someone wearing enormous, clumsy shoes. "This isn't normal," Carla murmured, clutching Lucas's arm. "Pedro!" Anna shouted, her voice echoing through the trees. The only response was the sound of branches snapping in the distance. They followed the footprints, which led them deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, and the sunlight seemed unable to penetrate the dense foliage. That's when they found it, Pedro's hat, lying on the ground, stained with blood. "Oh God!" Carla covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes filling with tears. Lucas picked up the hat, examining it carefully. "This doesn't mean anything. He might have just gotten hurt, that's all." Anna looked around the forest, feeling a chill run down her spine. She swore she saw something moving among the trees. A tall, lanky figure with bright colors that didn't belong in the somber surroundings. "We need to find him," she said, her voice firm, but her eyes betrayed the fear she felt. The group followed the footprints, which seemed to grow deeper and more chaotic as they went. The forest was eerily silent, as if all the creatures had fled or hidden. Anna led the way, her heart pounding in her chest, while Lucas and Carla followed closely. "Pedro!" Anna called again, but her voice was swallowed by the dense foliage. That's when they saw him. Among the trees, a tall, lanky figure moved with wide, awkward steps. It was a clown, wearing a faded, colorful outfit and a grotesque smile painted on its pale face. It stopped and stared directly at them, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "What the hell is that?" Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. The clown laughed, a high-pitched, shrill sound that echoed through the forest. Anna felt a chill run down her spine, remembering the circus, the painted faces, and the accident that had changed her life forever. "Let's get out of here," Carla said, grabbing Lucas's arm. "Now!" But before they could move, the clown disappeared among the trees, leaving behind only the echo of its laughter. The group stood still, looking at each other, unsure of what to do. "We need to keep going," Anna said, trying to stay calm. "We need to find Pedro." They pressed on, but the forest seemed to shift around them, the trees twisting and moving as if alive. Suddenly, Lucas stopped, his eyes fixed on something ahead. "What's that?" he asked, pointing at a figure approaching. It was another clown, but this one was different. Its face was sad, with painted tears on its cheeks. It moved closer, its eyes locked on Lucas. "Number," Lucas whispered, stepping back. "This can't be real." The sad clown reached out, as if to touch Lucas, but before it could, it vanished, leaving behind only a lingering sense of sadness and guilt. "Let's keep going," Anna said, trying to keep the group focused. "We need to find Pedro." The group continued to follow the footprints, but the forest seemed to conspire against them. The trees twisted and moved, creating paths that led nowhere. The sound of laughter echoed around them, coming from all directions. "This doesn't make sense," Carla said, looking around. "We were going straight, but it feels like we're walking in circles." Anna looked at the ground, where the footprints they had been following simply disappeared. She felt a chill run down her spine, remembering the circus, the painted faces, and the accident that had changed her life forever. "We need to keep going," she said, trying to stay calm. "We need to find Pedro." They pressed on, but the forest seemed to shift around them, the trees twisting and moving as if alive. Suddenly, Lucas stopped, his eyes fixed on something ahead. "What's that?" he asked, pointing at a figure approaching. It was another clown, but this one was different. Its face was sad, with painted tears on its cheeks. It moved closer, its eyes locked on Lucas. "Number," Lucas whispered, stepping back. "This can't be real." The sad clown reached out, as if to touch Lucas, but before it could, it vanished, leaving behind only a lingering sense of sadness and guilt. "Let's keep going," Anna said, trying to keep the group focused. "We need to find Pedro." The group finally reached a clearing, where a tall, grotesque figure awaited them. It was the malevolent entity that inhabited the forest, a creature made of parts of clowns, with a grotesque smile and eyes that glowed with a sinister light. "What the hell is that?" Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. The entity laughed, a high-pitched, shrill sound that echoed through the forest. Anna felt a chill run down her spine, remembering the circus, the painted faces, and the accident that had changed her life forever. "We need to face it," Anna said, trying to stay calm. "We need to overcome our fears." They prepared for the final confrontation, knowing their lives depended on it. The group finally reached a clearing, where a tall, grotesque figure awaited them. It was the malevolent entity that inhabited the forest, a creature made of parts of clowns, with a grotesque smile and eyes that glowed with a sinister light. "What the hell is that?" Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. The entity laughed, a high-pitched, shrill sound that echoed through the forest. Anna felt a chill run down her spine, remembering the circus, the painted faces, and the accident that had changed her life forever. "We need to face it," Anna said, trying to stay calm. "We need to overcome our fears." They prepared for the final confrontation, knowing their lives depended on it. The group finally reached a clearing, where a tall, grotesque figure awaited them. It was the malevolent entity that inhabited the forest, a creature made of parts of clowns, with a grotesque smile and eyes that glowed with a sinister light. "What the hell is that?" Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. The entity laughed, a high-pitched, shrill sound that echoed through the forest. Anna felt a chill run down her spine, remembering the circus, the painted faces, and the accident that had changed her life forever. "We need to face it," Anna said, trying to stay calm. "We need to overcome our fears." They prepared for the final confrontation, knowing their lives depended on it. Carla sacrificed herself to allow Anna and Lucas to escape. She faced the malevolent entity, using her inner strength to defeat it. The forest began to crumble, and the clowns disappeared. "Let's go," Anna shouted, pulling Lucas's arm. "We need to get out of here." They ran through the forest, which now seemed to be collapsing around them. Trees fell, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Finally, they reached the edge of the forest, where the car was still parked. "We made it," Lucas said, panting. "We escaped." Anna looked back at the forest, now engulfed in flames. She felt a sense of relief, but also sadness, knowing Carla had sacrificed herself to save them. Anna and Lucas made it out of the forest, but they were irrevocably changed. They found an object, a clown mask, that suggested the entity was still alive. The story ended with one last laugh echoing in the distance, leaving an air of ambiguity and tension. The neighborhood was like any other: quiet streets, old houses with well-kept gardens, and kids playing until the sun went down. John, Mary, Peter, and Anna were inseparable, always together on their adventures. They had known each other for as long as they could remember, and the neighborhood was their kingdom. "Let's go to the park," Peter suggested, swinging a soccer ball in his hand. "The abandoned park?" Anna asked, hesitating. "My mom said we shouldn't go there." "Come on," said John, the leader of the group. "It's just an old park. What could happen?" Mary, the smartest of the group, looked at the park in the distance. The place seemed eerie, even in the sunlight. The trees were tall and twisted, and a broken swing swayed in the wind, as if someone was sitting on it. "I think we should go home," Mary said, but her voice was drowned out by Peter's excitement. "Let's go," he insisted, running toward the park. The group followed him, but something in the air felt off. The silence was heavy, and the sound of their laughter echoed strangely, as if it were being swallowed by the trees. When they reached the park, they noticed something odd: toys scattered on the ground, as if someone had been playing there moments before. "Who left these here?" Anna asked, picking up a toy car. "I don't know," John replied, looking around. "But let's get out of here. This is giving me the creeps." They left the park, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave them. When they got home, the sun was already setting, and the neighborhood seemed darker than ever. That night, the streets were empty, and the air felt colder. John, Mary, Peter, and Anna were at home, but the unease lingered. They decided to spend the night together at John's house. "Did you hear that?" Anna asked, looking out the window. "What?" John replied, trying to sound brave. "That laugh," Anna said, her voice trembling. "It sounds like it's coming from the alley." They looked at each other, hesitant. The laugh echoed again, sharp and shrill, as if it were coming from all directions. Finally, John decided to investigate. "Let's go," he said, grabbing a flashlight. "But stay together." The group stepped into the alley, where the darkness was thicker. The flashlight lit their path, but the shadows seemed to move on their own. Suddenly, they saw him, a tall, lanky figure in a colorful outfit, with a grotesque smile painted on his pale face. It was the clown. "What the hell is that?" Peter whispered, his voice shaking. The clown laughed, a high-pitched, shrill sound that echoed through the alley. He stopped and stared directly at them, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Before they could react, he disappeared, leaving behind only the echo of his laughter. "Let's get out of here," Mary said, grabbing John's arm. "Now!" They ran back to the house, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave them. The night was long and restless, and the clown continued to haunt their thoughts. The next morning, Peter didn't show up for their usual meetup. The group went to his house, but his mom said he hadn't come home the night before. "Where could he be?" Anna asked, worried. "I don't know," John replied, trying to stay calm. "Let's look for him." They searched for Peter, asking neighbors and checking every corner of the neighborhood. Finally, they found something in the abandoned park, a red balloon tied to a low tree branch. "This is Peter's," Mary said, picking up the balloon. "He always carries one of these." "But where is he?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. They looked around, but there was no sign of Peter. The park seemed darker than ever, and the silence was oppressive. Suddenly, they heard a distant laugh coming from deep within the park. "Let's go," John said, trying to sound brave. "We need to find him." The group followed the laugh, which led them to a part of the park they had never explored before. There, they found a hidden entrance leading to a dark, damp tunnel. "What is this?" Anna asked, hesitating. "I don't know," John replied, "but I think this is where the clown is." They looked at each other, knowing they had no choice but to go in. The tunnel was narrow and dark, with damp earthen walls and roots hanging from the ceiling. The group moved slowly, with John leading the way and Mary shining the flashlight. "This feels like it goes on forever," Anna whispered, holding Mary's hand. "Stay together," John said, trying to stay calm. "We don't know what's down here." They kept following the tunnel, which seemed to go deeper and deeper. Suddenly, they heard a distant voice echoing through the walls. "Peter," John called, his voice shaking. The voice answered, but it was distorted and strange, as if it were coming from far away. The group kept following the voice, which led them to a large underground chamber. "And you, Peter?" the clown said. "You're afraid of being left behind, aren't you?" Peter felt a lump in his throat, remembering all the times he had been left behind. He tried to stand firm, but fear paralyzed him. "I'm not afraid of you," Peter said, trying to sound brave. The clown laughed again, a high-pitched, shrill sound that echoed through the chamber. He stopped and stared directly at the group, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Then let's play," the clown said, his voice distorted and terrifying. The group prepared for the final confrontation, knowing their lives depended on it. Mary sacrificed herself to let the others escape. She faced the clown head-on, using her intelligence to distract him while John, Anna, and Peter ran for the exit. "Let's go," John shouted, pulling Anna's arm. "We need to get out of here." They ran through the tunnel, which now seemed to be collapsing around them. The damp earthen walls began to give way, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Finally, they reached the exit, where the sun shone brightly. "We made it," John said, panting. "We escaped." Anna looked back at the tunnel, now collapsing. She felt a sense of relief but also sadness, knowing Mary had sacrificed herself to save them. "She did it for us," Anna said, tears streaming down her face. John hugged Anna, trying to comfort her. They knew they would never forget Mary and the sacrifice she had made. "Let's go home," John said, his voice firm. "We need to tell everyone what happened." They walked back to the neighborhood, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave them. When they got home, they found a red balloon on their doorstep, suggesting the clown was still alive.